Okay, hello everyone. Okay, so in this video, let's talk about the scanner class and how to use a scanner class to accept information from the user, okay, to be able to use in your program. All right, so I'm going to add a system.out.println statements, println statements to this program and just display a string scanner. Okay, so in the part of a Java program, we briefly touched on system.out.println. We talked about system as being what's called a class. Now, in the future, we'll get into more details about classes and object. But a class is essentially basically code that the people who developed the Java language, it's code that they've written, right? And that code defines how an object should be, or the kind of properties or function that the object can perform. So objects are created from classes. System is a class, and which means objects can be created from it. And now what's in the system class is basically a definition of what the object should be. Think of the system class as a mother, and think of an object that's going to be created from the system class as a baby. Right, so system basically defines how the baby should look and the kind of things that a baby can do, right? So once you create a baby, or a mother gives birth to a baby, the baby has eyes. She should have eyes, ears, and the baby can walk. I mean, not instantly, right? But the baby can, let's say, talk. That too, not instantly. What am I saying? All right, so the baby can cry, right? The baby can cry, or the baby can move. Right, so that's how a class is. A class is just a definition of how an object that is in the future going to be created from it. Okay, how the object should look, or the properties it should have, or basically what it can do. All right, so system is a class, and out is an object. Okay, that's created from a class, right? And this object has special things or special functions that it can perform. In this case, it can print out stuff. Now, system.out, okay, and again, we'll get into details about classes and objects. System.out, okay, it's referring to our computer's main output device, right? In this case, I'm referring to the monitor, right? So I'm basically, the purpose of println is basically printing out this argument, okay, to our monitor or our output device. So this is a method, okay, and it's a function, okay. It's a function in a class. So in the class, it was defined that, okay, this, once an object is created from the class, right, it should be able to have a function to display stuff on a screen, right? So this is an object, okay, that's created from the system class, and once it's created from the system class, it should be able to print out what a user has provided to you, okay, on the screen. So this println method is basically displaying this argument, this scanner string, on our main output device. So system.out it refers to basically our output device, and it's been, stuff is being pushed to it, for it to be displayed. Now there's also what's called system.in. Now, system.in also refers to an input device, a computer's input device, right? And we'll talk more about that. All right. So the purpose of system.out is to display stuff out to our output device, main computer's output, our computer's output device, right? In this case, our monitor or our screen. And system.in, which we are going to talk about, is a way to accept input from an input device, like, for example, a keyboard, or from a file, or from something like that. All right. So in order to be able to use the scanner class, right, the scanner is also a class. And just to harp on what a class is again, right, a class is basically, think of it as a definition of how something should look like. Think of it as a mother. And from a mother, babies are created. From a class, objects are created. And all the objects will look, okay, or will have properties and functions based on the definition in the class. So the class defines how the object should look like. So the scanner class basically allows us to create object from it, and we can use those objects to basically accept input from the user and then perform functions on that input for us to be able to use it in our program. So to use a scanner class, first of all, this scanner class is written by the people who created the Java language, and it's stored in what's called the Java API. And the Java API is, think of it as a huge library that has all these different classes grouped together in packages. Just think of it as a huge library. So we didn't write this ourselves, and it's not available to our program instantly. So in order to use a scanner class, which is a mechanism for allowing us to accept input from a user to be able to use in our programs, right? That's what the scanner class allows us to do that. If we want to write a program that accepts input from a user, a scanner class is one way we can use to do that. It's not available to us. It's already been created by the people who created the Java language. So in order to use it, we need to kind of include it in our program so that it will look like, all the code that is written in that scanner class is available to us, right? And we can do that with one line of code by using an import statement. So import, right? And then we type in java.util.scanner with a capital S. Class names, remember, by convention, start with a capital letter and a semicolon. So what this means is we are importing the scanner class. We are adding to our program the scanner class located in a package called java.util. Okay, these classes are grouped together. Similar classes are grouped together in packages, and they're given names. Now, this scanner class is located in a package called java.util, and it's all located in the Java API, which is this huge library. So just think of it this way. This is the location of the scanner class. Okay, the scanner class is located in the java.util package in the Java API. So by doing this, we have included all the code that the Python developers designed, for the scanner class. We have it in our program now with this one statement. We've imported it. All right. So there are other things we have to do. So in our main method, right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to declare a variable. So normally when we declare regular primitive variables would say something like int, and we'll call it number, right? And I can initialize it a value of 2. Now we talked about the difference between primitive variables and then class type variables. We said primitive variables hold the data directly, right? So I just wanted you to see this before we create a class type variable. Now remember when we're talking about strings, right? String was a class, and then we create a string class type variable to hold strings. All right. So in order to use a scanner, we've imported it. We have access to it, right? We need to create an object, okay, from the scanner class, and we need a class type variable to hold, okay, or refer to that object. So I'm going to do that. Create a variable of type scanner, okay, and I'm going to give it any name. In this case, I'm going to call it keyboard. Now this is just a variable name, keyboard. And this is the type. This is just like creating something like, I'm going to use a comment here. This is just like creating something like int number. This is the name of the variable, and this is the type. This is the name of the class type variable, and this is the type of variable it is. Meaning this variable over here, this keyboard variable is going to hold an object created from the scanner class. All right. So it's not holding it yet, right? But it's been created. Okay, in the future it's going to hold an object created from the scanner class. I'm going to use the equal sign over here to now create. I'm going to use the equal sign over here to now create a scanner object. Okay, an object created from the scanner class, and I do that with the keyword new. Okay, so scanner keyboard, which is just a variable. I'm using the new keyword to create a new object. What type of object is it? All right, so it's a scanner object, and I'm going to close this. Okay, so basically open and close parentheses and then terminate the program. All right. So by doing this, I've created a class type variable of type scanner, meaning this variable is going to hold or refer to an object created from this class. And I'm using this new keyword to create an object. Okay, and what type of object is it? It's a scanner object. Now in this parentheses over here, I need to specify what is the source, okay, of input. Now I know this may seem more confusing and all that, but don't worry, I'll explain it. So in the parentheses over here, once you create the scanner object, you specify to it what is the source of input. Where are you going to accept input from? Is it from the keyboard? When you're asking your user to enter information, is it from the keyboard, or is it from a file, or what is it? In our case, we're going to use a keyboard, right? And system.in refers to our keyboard. Okay, system.in refers to the keyboard that we use, right? Now, why do we have to do all this? That's because system.in, okay, allows us to be able to accept input from the user. All right. System.in on its own allows us to accept input from the user, but then it accepts input from the user only in byte values. Remember we talked about the data types, byte, int, double, basically longs, float, doubles. The system.in only accepts data from the user, okay, only as byte information or byte values. But the thing is, when we write our programs, we're going to need not just bytes, but we're going to need integers, we're going to need float, doubles, longs, we're going to need all that, right? So just accepting byte information here won't work. So the scanner class, okay, the scanner class was created, okay, was designed by the people who created the Java language to be able to accept, okay, it's using conjunction with the system.in. So the scanner class was created in conjunction, was created to be able to convert the byte info that the system.in accepts from the user to data that we can use, like strings or primitive type data like longs and floats, right? So that's why it was created. The scanner class has these functions, or these think of it as superpowers that basically take byte info. So system.in on its own will be able to take information or accept information from the user, or read information from a file or something like that. But that information will remain as byte info, BYTE, byte info. And we can't use byte info all the time. We need strings, we need numbers. So the scanner class, right, was created in such a way that once you create an object from the scanner class, you specify the source of input, okay, from the keyboard, right? We know from the keyboard system.in takes in byte info. And the scanner class gives us the ability to be able to convert that byte info to, let's say, an integer, or to, let's say, a string or stuff like that. So that's why the scanner class was created. And in order to create it, you create a class type variable of type scanner. You create a new scanner object. You specify the source, right? And the scanner class, okay, this variable now points to the scanner object. Okay, now the scanner class, okay, the way it was defined in such a way that any object that's created from the scanner class will have the superpowers to be able to convert the byte info or the byte data to any data type that we want, be it strings or numbers or whatever, right? So now we have the scanner object here. Now this is a class type variable, so it's not holding the object directly. Remember we talked about that. This variable over here is holding the memory address of the scanner object, that was created here, the new scanner object that was created here. So this keyboard is not directly holding the scanner object, it's holding the memory address where it's located in memory, okay, of the scanner object. It points to it though. When we are referring to that scanner object, we are going to use this variable because that's what it's holding. That's what it's pointing to it, or that's what it's holding, or that's what it's holding it, right? But it's not holding it directly. It's holding the memory address, okay, memory address. Now this, you can call it anything. I call it keyboard because system.in, we are referring to our device, right? Our input device, which is the keyboard, system.in. Now this can be another source. This can be something like a file, right? But for now, system.in refers to system.in is an object that allows us to basically accept it has the power to be able to accept input from the user. That's how the system class was designed, that any object that was an object that's created from it will have the power to be able to accept input from the user. But the only difference is it accepts inputs as byte info, and we need another scanner class, right? The scanner class was designed in such a way that any object that's created from it will have the ability to be able to take byte info from the system.in and convert it to real data that we can use, like a string or numbers or stuff like that. So I just wanted this to be clear because the scanner can be confusing, right? So now this keyboard refers to our scanner object that we created here. So now let's see how we will use the scanner. So I'm just going to use a system.out.println over here to display a message to the user. I'm going to say enter a number. And now let's just test this program. Let's just add a colon here. Enter a number. Let's just test this program, compile this, and there are no errors. Run this program to see what happens. And it says and enter a number. But we're also displaying this here, so let's just remove that, right? Let's just remove that, and let's compile this and run it again. So it's looking like a program, right? Except we are not actually asking the user for input. So this is just a message to the user, enter a number. Now we need to create some kind of mechanism, right, to now pop up some kind of text box, right, to allow the user to type in something. So we have a scanner object, and the way you use a scanner object is this. So I have displayed enter a number. Remember, system.in is going to accept byte info, right? And this scanner, we're going to use the functionality of this object to be able to convert that information. So I'm going to type in over here. I'm going to refer to the scanner object, right? Keyboard, okay? And I'm going to use the access operator dot to access what's called a method, right? Remember, a method is basically one or more lines of code wrapped up together in curly braces and given a name. And when that name is used, or when that name is called, when I type that name, when I refer to that name, those series of lines of code are going to be executed, or they're going to run. This kind of class was designed in such a way that any object that was created from it, in this case, keyboard is an object that was created from it, will have certain functionalities, certain things that it can do, and those things are the methods. So when I use a name of one of them, so I'm going to basically, you call one of them, right? It's called next int, and it's a method, so it's going to have parentheses, opening and closing parentheses. We'll talk more about methods, so don't worry. In this case, this method doesn't accept any arguments, doesn't accept any extra information here, so I'm going to leave it empty. So this scanner class was designed in such a way that anytime an object is created from it, it will have certain special powers or certain things it can do, and those things are designed in the scanner class as a methods. So this is one of the methods in the scanner class, and any object that's created from the scanner class automatically has access to, any object has access or has those powers, has those methods. It's like a mother. Okay, a mother can walk already, right? When a mother gives birth to a baby, the baby can walk too, right? Not instantly, but with time. And they have that power to be able to cry and move and act just like a human being. So this object created from this class will have the powers that this kind of class, was defined. Will have the powers, so the definition of powers in this kind of class. And this is one of them, next int. What this means is this keyboard now is going to take whatever information that the user types and then convert it to an integer. Okay, you can see it from the name, next int. So this statement over here is going to pop up some kind of text box. Once this power is invoked, or once it's called, that's the actual term for it. Once it's called, some kind of text box is going to pop up to the user, right? And it's going to allow the user to type in something. Now, because this is keyboard.nextInt, because it's attaching the next int to it, keyboard has the power to keyboard the next int is basically popping up a text box and allowing the user to type in something. And this next int method is basically converting. Remember, system.in over here is attached to keyboard, right? So this next int is basically converting the byte info, okay, that the user types. Okay, basically whatever the user types is initially converted to it's initially a byte info. So this next int is converting that byte info to an integer, right? That's the power of this next int. And once it does, it's going to return it. By return, I mean it's going to bring it back. It's going to throw it back to you and say, okay, you gave me this information, I've converted it to an integer, here you go. This is your information converted to a number, or converted to an integer. And so once it returns that result, once it has finished converting the byte info to an integer, it's going to give it back to us. And so we need a place to store it. We need a variable to store that result in. And so right up here, even before my scanner object over here, declaration, I'm going to create a variable. Since it's returning an integer, I need to make sure I have an integer to get back the result, or to store the result. So I'm going to define an int, and I'm going to call it user number with camel case, and I'll terminate it. And over here, since it's returning whatever the user typed converted to an integer, I'm going to store that in the integer variable that I just created. Well, the int variable I just created over here. All right, so that's pretty much what's happening. And then now we'll have whatever the user typed converted to a number stored in user number. And then I can go ahead using a system.out.println statement to print out the content of user number. Now let's see if this worked. Now let's add a message to it and say that you typed space. Let's concatenate it to this number over here. So let's compile this. No errors. Run this. Enter a number. I type in 7. Hit enter, and it said you type 7. So I know this kind of class can be confusing, but it's pretty much simple. System.out, right, is a mechanism, okay, for displaying some kind of information to our screen or to an output device. In this case, system.out is referring to our monitor. So it takes this information, enter a number, and displays it on the screen. It can just do it. It's straightforward. But system.in is a bit complex. System.in, right? System is a class, right? It's just a definition of how an object should be. So this in method has the power to be able to accept information from the user, right? The only problem is that the information that the in method over here is accepting from the user is in byte info. It's byte data. But we will need more than byte data in our programs. We will need integers, we will need floats, doubles, longs, we will need all that information in our program. So system.in accepting only byte info doesn't help us. That's where the scanner class comes in. You have to import it, right, to have access to it. The people who developed the the Java language created it for us. So we imported it. We need to create an object, because this is just a definition of how an object created from this class should look like, and the kind of things it can do, the kind of superpowers it can have. Those superpowers are basically the methods defined in the scanner class. So we create a variable of type scanner, because this variable is going to use to refer to the object that we create from this scanner class. All right, so over here we are using the equal sign. Okay, and over here we are creating the scanner object. All right, we are creating the scanner object, and then this equal sign is going to assign this class type variable the memory address of the scanner object. Now remember that system.in, the in method, accept byte info. Byte info, we can't work with it, and so we kind of hand it over to our scanner. We hand the byte info to our scanner object that we created here. This variable refers to our scanner object that we created. And this scanner object has the power or the potential to be able to take the byte info, okay, that was accepted from the user, and convert it to whatever we need it to be converted to. Now there are other superpowers, there are other methods, right, that we can use. There's next int, there is next double. We can convert it to any type of data we want. Next int is one of them, and we'll see the rest of them in future videos. So this object has the power to be able to convert the byte info that the user typed into an integer. And when it does, it says, okay, I'm done, here you go. It returns it back. It gives it back to us this way, right? And so we need a place to store it. Otherwise, it's going to be thrown away once it gives it back to us. It's saying, okay, I'm done. Where are you? Okay. And so in this case, I needed a place to store it. I needed to be there when it was giving it back to me. So I created a variable. Since it was returning or giving me back an integer, I needed to create an int variable called user number. And user number is now going to take the result that this keyboard, the next int method is giving me back as an int. So it's an int, right? So I'm making sure I'm storing it in an int variable. So I'm taking the result back, and now I have it here. I have the byte info converted to an int here, and over here I'm just displaying the result of user number. So this kind of class can be a bit confusing, but I just wanted to do this to clear things up. Now we are not done with this kind of class. We'll see more explanations and more examples and more use cases of it, and the other methods also. We'll see all about it. And so don't worry, we'll use it multiple times and you get used to it, right? But practice, try things out, try to have an understanding of it. I know classes and objects can be confusing. We'll talk more about it. And I know this kind itself can be confusing. Don't worry, at least you know something about it now, right? You see more about it and it will be clearer. Okay, so if you have any questions, please comment down below and I'll do everything to respond to them. Thank you very much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and then I'll see you next time with the next video. All right then, bye-bye.